The NFL season is finally here, so make sure you're ready with NFL Sunday Ticket and YouTube TV. It gives you the most live NFL games all in one place, exactly what you need to make your Sundays more magical. Sign up today at youtube.com/Sunday Ticket. Local and national games on YouTube TV. NFL Sunday Ticket for out-of-market games excludes digital-only games.
When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Kroger for thousands of appetizing ingredients that inspire countless mouth-watering meals. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices. Plus, extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week and up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with points. So you can get big flavors and big savings. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
Welcome to the Two-Footed Podcast, your daily dive into the biggest stories and talking points from the world of football, with a particular focus on the Premier League. Before we get started, a quick shout out to our presenting sponsor, Liberty Shield. Liberty Shield is a VPN provider, and one of the many benefits of their service is that you can change your IP address to unlock geo-restricted content. And for Premier League fans like us, that means you can catch all the action no matter where you are. So if you use their UK VPN, that means you get all live matches on Sky Sports, TNT Sport, Amazon Prime, and the highlights with Match of the Day on BBC iPlayer. Furthermore, you can switch your location to the USA to access all those matches you may otherwise miss using American streaming services like Peacock and USA Network. If you sign up now, you can get 25% off by using the code EPL25OFF. That's EPL25OFF at checkout for 25% off. That's whether you choose their VPN router or the software app for your favorite devices. Liberty Shield have got you covered. Oh, and don't forget, after today's episode, be sure to check out our shorter bite-sized pod, the Two-Footed Extra. That will keep you up to speed with all the latest news and gossip. And be sure to check out the other shows that EPL Index offers. Today was hugely enjoyable, a tad predictable, previewing every Premier League round with a different guest each week, where he really does put them through the ringer. You come off that show, I've guested on that show, you come off it, and you feel like you've been interrogated. It's a really good listen, though. There's also our new show, our roundup show. It's called The Final Whistle. It's hosted by Nina Kauser and Ben Poscod, and they summarise all the matches and the big talking points. It comes out every Sunday evening, so make sure you're listening. Now, let's dive in to today's biggest stories. What's good, boys and girls? Two-Footed Podcast. Today is Thursday. It is September 26th, and it is absolutely pissing rain. I'm not feeling very well today, so this podcast might be a bit clunky. There might be a few cuts in it where I've had to go lie down or something, but we're going to power through and hope for the best. EFL Cup last night, Liverpool 5, West Ham United 1. A Jarrell Quansah own goal put West Ham ahead. 2 from Diogo Jota, 1 from Mohamed Salah, and 2 from Cody Gakpo gave Liverpool a comprehensive victory. Edson Alvarez sent off for West Ham United. Arsenal 5, Bolton 1. Bolton missed a sitter and then had a Stonewall penalty turned down before Declan Rice put Arsenal 1-0 up on 16 minutes. Ethan Nwaneri scored twice on 37 and 49 to give the Gunners a commanding lead. Does look a hell of a player, doesn't he? And then Aaron Collins pulled one back for Bolton on a counter. But Raheem Sterling made it 4 with a tap-in, and Kai Havertz made it 5 in the 77th minute to give Arsenal a comfortable win over Bolton. The draw has been made for the round of 16, and Arsenal will travel to Preston. Tottenham will host Manchester City. Manchester United will host Leicester. Newcastle or AFC Wimbledon will host Chelsea. Aston Villa host Crystal Palace. Brighton host Liverpool. Brentford host Sheffield Wednesday. And Southampton host Stoke. Those games we played the 29th and 30th of October. And I think it's pretty clear that Tottenham versus Man City is the standout game. But I do think Liverpool versus Brighton should be good as well. Villa versus Palace is a decent tie too. In the Europa League, we had games last night and we have games tonight. So last night, AZ Alkmaar beat IF Elfsberg by 3-2. Ruben van Bommel scored 2 and Troy Parrott scored a penalty for Alkmaar. Now, Alkmaar had been 1-0 down. Uma scored for Elfsberg. Then they went 2-1 up, and then Headland equalised for Elfsberg before the Parrott penalty. Sebastian Hallman sent off in the 86th minute for Elfsberg. Moving on then to the next game that took place. Bodo Glimt 3, Porto 2. Amora Dion continues his good form. He puts Porto 1 up. Oyush equalises on 15. Then it's Jens Peter Hauge scoring on 40 and 62 before Dennis Gould pulls one back in the last minute for Porto. Mata was sent off for Bodo in the 51st minute, but they still managed to hold on for the win. Jens Peter Haug, I think it's Haug, is it Haug or Hauge? What an interesting career he's had so far. Like, interesting in kind of a bad way. So he broke through at Bodo, and in the 2020 season, he had a real breakout year. Scored 17 goals in 21 games and was bought by AC Milan. They gave him 1 season to prove himself. He scores 5 in 24. They loan him out to Ghent. It didn't go great. He joined Eintracht Frankfurt. No, sorry, he joined Eintracht first on loan. Then he went to Ghent. Then Eintracht signed him, barely played him last year, and have now loaned him back to Bodo, and he's playing really well for them again. Talented player, and still young enough, 24, turns 25 in a couple of weeks. I expect he'll get another chance somewhere in mainland Europe, but the Milan move was too early or just the wrong move for him. Like, he's probably ready for Italy, just not ready for Milan and the demands there. But I do like him as a player. Moving on then to the next game that took place, which was Galatasaray versus PAOK. Baba Rahman, own goal, put Galatasaray 1 up. Then Konstantilias equalised for PAOK. Agkun scored to put Galatasaray ahead on 75. Mauro Icardi on 95 to wrap things up. Midtjylland won. Hoffenheim, almost at Heidenheim. Hoffenheim won. Dario Isario, very talented young Chilean winger, scores on 42 minutes. Max Morstead equalises on 89 to give Hoffenheim a share of the points. Manchester United won 21. Christian Eriksen scores on 35, a rafting shot into the top corner. Sam Lammers equalises on 68. United just defensively shambolic. Not sure what Harry Maguire was doing. Ugarte slides in, makes a good challenge, but there's no United player there to pick the ball up. It's played through and Lammers finishes brilliantly. Really good goal for him. Dinamo Kiev 0, Lazio 3. Dia scored on 4. Deli Bashuro on 33. And again, Dia scores on 35 to wrap things up in the first half. Braharu was sent off for Kiev on 72. Noslin sent off for Lazio on 82. 26 fouls total in the game, but only 3 yellow cards. 3 yellow cards and 2 red cards. That's very unusual. Ludogorets 0, Slavia Prague 2, Jurasek and Chaitel with the goals for Slavia. That's a good win for them on the road. Anderlecht 2, Ferencváros 1. Yari Vasherin scoring on 60. Kasper Dahlberg with a penalty on 66. Nilsson and Gulu sent off on 81, but then Adama Traore pulled one back, Ferencváros. It's a good win for Anderlecht. They'll be happy there. Nice won. Real Sociedad won. Valencia scored on 18 to put Sociedad one up. Rosario equalised on 45 to give Nice a point to get their competition started. I know Tanguy Ndombele coming off the bench there for Nice. And the Ashime starting in a back three, which isn't really the best use of him. So that's it. That's what we had last night. Tonight, 5:45, we get Fenerbahce, Union Saint-Gilloise, and Malmo against Rangers. So those should be two decent games. In the 8 p.m. games, we get Braga, Maccabi Tel Aviv, Eintracht Frankfurt against Victoria Plzen, Steaua Bucharest against ORFS, Ajax against Besiktas should be decent, Lyon versus Olympiacos should be decent, Tottenham against Qarabag, and the big one is AS Roma against Athletic Club de Bilbao. That should be a really good game. So, exciting games to look forward to tonight. I suppose Fenerbahce Union is the one I would watch from the 5:45, but can understand if people would watch Rangers as a British team. But I think the 8 o'clocks, there's good games there. Ajax, Besiktas, Lyon, Olympiacos, and especially Roma Athletic Club. Those should all be good. You've obviously got the option of watching Tottenham as well. And Spurs are fun to watch. Like, they have flaws, unquestionably. I've spoken about them recently enough. I think Ange is just being a little bit too naive at times. But I can see them playing an exciting, attacking, open brand of football tonight and scoring some goals. So, yeah, looking forward to watching some football tonight. I will be back after the break.
When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Kroger for thousands of appetizing ingredients that inspire countless mouth-watering meals. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices. Plus, extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week and up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with points. So you can get big flavors and big savings. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
Throw the best birthday party ever that your child will always talk about. Big Air Trampoline Park inside Fieldhouse USA at the Polaris Mall can do just that. Award-winning birthday party packages start at just $300, and all birthday parties include pizza, drinks, a party room with a party host, grip socks, printed invitations, and all 40 attractions at Big Air Trampoline Park. It's a birthday party you and your kids will never forget. Book your party today. Big Air Columbus, where the fun never ends. Visit BigAirUSA.com/Columbus for details.
Right, welcome back. So, today is Thursday, so it is questions day, and we have a whole bunch of questions, so we're going to jump into these. AMK2889, in the last few months, Cruz, Szczesny, and now Varane have all chose to retire when they all could still play at a decent level, a high level for Cruz, or excel in a lower league. I'm sure that there are other names I'm missing too. Do you feel that we could be in an era where athletes are choosing retirement at still somewhat at a young age, with still something to offer in the game in some capacity? If so, how much of that could be down to them feeling as if they're overplayed? Could the rise of wealth in the game be a factor? What most players earn a week has skyrocketed, so maybe they feel they don't need to play as long as they get the wealth they want before they retire. If we are seeing a rise in early retirements, how damaging to the game do you think it could be? I get that every player is different. Some players should retire early and some shouldn't. I think wealth is a massive factor here. Like, if you consider, let's just say, Bukayo Saka. Actually, no, you know what? Let's go with Jadon Sancho, right? So Sancho goes to Manchester United and he's on £350,000 a week, or thereabouts. Like, consider that type of wealth at age 21. You're now earning, before tax, obviously, 15 million a year. So let's say after tax, you come out with about 8, right? That's just from playing. that doesn't include your endorsements. Let's just say your endorsements and all that, they give you another 2 million a year, right? So after tax, another million. So now you're earning £9 million a year. Like, let's be really honest about this. To live a really good lifestyle, 1 year of that leaves you living a really good lifestyle for the rest of your life. 2, you're living like a king for the rest of your life. 3, you've got so much money you couldn't spend it if you tried. Not only you, but you're also setting up generations below you, your kids, your grandkids, your great-grandkids. They're going to inherit enormous wealth because, assuming you're not a moron, money doesn't shrink, it grows. You put that money sitting in the bank. You put 9 million just sitting in the bank and leave it there. Just 1 year's salary, put it in the bank and leave it there. By the time your great-grandkid inherits that, it's going to be likely over double in value. So a lot of the motivation, I think, for a lot of players, and I'm not using saying Sancho, but there was questions over his motivation. We've seen it at United with a number of young players, Yanazai being the most notable one, who went from earning £800 a week to 65 grand a week overnight 10 years ago, maybe. And all of a sudden, you could just see it with him that his motivation just disappeared. And we see it more and more now. Like, there are mediocre players in the Premier League who are earning far more than the greatest players in Premier League history earned. I remember when Roy Keane became the first £100,000 a week player in England, right towards the end of his United tenure, because he had a clause in his contract where whenever a teammate got a new contract, they couldn't be earning the same as Keane. He had to be earning a little bit more. As club captain, that was just an agreement that United made. And his wage bumped to 100,000 a week. And that was probably the start of the end for him at United. It was probably part of why they were eager to get him gone, because he was no longer that level of player. But he was Roy Keane, the greatest midfield player in Premier League history. And that's what he maxed out at with his earnings in the Premier League. Henry maxed out, I believe, at about 120,000 in the Premier League. Now you've got lads playing for teams in the bottom 3 earning similar types of money. Now you've got players who are squad players. Like James Milner was at Liverpool as a squad player, earning 150,000, 160,000 a week. You've got these mediocre players. Jordan Henderson, his biggest contract at Liverpool was £200,000 a week. And he was mediocre in his prime. By the end, he was garbage. By the end of his Liverpool tenure, you couldn't have him on the pitch. He was such a liability. And there he was, earning double what Roy Keane had earned. And when you listen to Roy Keane talk, he talks about how he's got a great life, he made great money. And he's gone from the Premier League 20 years. So now you factor in, you've got and that was at the end of his career, he was getting that money. Now you've got these kids getting that type of money really early in their career. Really, really early in their career. Like, let's not forget, Carney Chukwuemeka is on 100 grand a week at Chelsea. He's at best a third stringer at Chelsea. And what age is he? 20, 21? So there is that thing where players are getting all the money really early, so they don't need to play on as long. They don't have the motivation to. I think with some, it's definitely an injury thing. I think with someone like Rafa Varane, he's probably just thought, you know what? I've got a wife, I've got I don't know if he's got a kid or multiple kids, but he probably just doesn't want to spend his days going through injury rehab. He probably wants to spend his days with his wife or playing with his kids, walking his dogs. He doesn't want to be going in and having to go through surgery and then all the rehabilitation that comes after it. So I do think there's a multitude of factors. But, you know, like, you look at players from, say, the 70s. Like, those guys finished their careers and then had to go and get jobs. So they played on as long as possible. And the big thing for them was if they could get a testimonial. If they could get a testimonial, that could really set them up. Now players get testimonials and the money goes to charity because the players don't need it. So I do think there's a multitude of factors. There's definitely some players that retire too early. I think Toni Kroos is an example. I think he absolutely could have played at least 2 more years. But he gotten everything he wanted out of the game as well. Like, you do have to factor in that in specific cases like a Toni Kroos, what is there left for him to achieve in the game? Like, what more can Toni Kroos do in the game? His place as an all-time great is secured. You look at the honours, 3 Bundesliga titles and a European Cup with Bayern. 4 La Liga titles and 5 European Cups with Real and a World Cup with Germany. You know, like, there's nothing left for him to prove. Nothing left for him to achieve. No more mountains left to conquer. 6 European Cups, 6 Club World Cups as well, it should be pointed out. Like, there's just nothing left for him to have to achieve. So I think his case might be slightly different. Maybe he's got other interests that he wants to pursue. Maybe he's just got different things. Maybe, again, he just wants to spend time with his kids. He's got 3 kids. He has a house in Mallorca. Maybe he just wants to relax. You know, like Toni Kroos played a lot of football. 731 senior games at club level, 114 at international level. And let's not forget he was retired for 2 years from international football. So you're talking 9 on 850 games. That's a lot of football. Like, he might have just felt like he'd done his part. He didn't have anything left to prove. There was nothing left to achieve. So he's moved on. I think there is a plethora of reasons, but yeah, I do think we're going to see more and more players retire that bit earlier. We'll still see some like Cristiano go on and do what he's doing. We'll see, like, you know, like Zlatan played till he was 40. We'll still see some, but those will be players that are driven by ego and haven't had significant injuries. Like, Cristiano and Zlatan might be the 2 most egotistical players to ever play the game. And I know Cristiano and Zlatan both tore their ACLs, but other than that, there's very little injury history for either of them. Isaac Gilding, question for the pod. Who is the best pressing side of all time? Who is the best side at absorbing pressure and countering of all time? If they were to play each other, who do you think might come out on top? The best pressing side of all time, in my opinion, is Arrigo Sacchi's AC Milan, 2-time European Cup winning AC Milan. The best counter-attacking team of all time, this might be biased. I actually feel like the best counter-attacking team of all time is Klopp's Liverpool team. I really do. And I think it could be even more devastating with the midfield of Oxlade-Chamberlain, Emre Can, and Gini Wijnaldum. I thought that midfield was absolutely outrageous on the counter. Now, they weren't necessarily a team that absorbed a lot of pressure, though. They would tend to win the ball in the middle third and then spring the counter from there. Obviously, they won a lot of ball in the final third as well. So if you're looking for someone that sat in and countered from deep, Mourinho's Chelsea would be hard to beat. Arjen Robben was an absolute cheat code. The first Chelsea team. Robben was a cheat code. Drogba was a counter-attacking cheat code because if they won the ball in their own third, they could just lace it long to him. He'd chase it into the corners or he'd hold it up if it came to him, and he'd bring others into the game as they flooded forward. So in terms of absorbing pressure and countering, I think I'd go with Mourinho's Chelsea. Who would win a game between them? Saki's Milan, and I think even Mourinho would agree with that. Tiberius Sports Ball, even. Unfortunately, my brothers are United fans and my dad is an Arsenal fan. Oh dear. How's this happened? I need to know who your mum supports or if she has any interest in football. And if not, I need to know how it is that your dad, as an Arsenal fan, allowed his three of his kids, I don't know if there's more, to become two United fans and a Liverpool fan. I need to know how this has happened. I need to know more about the dynamics of your family. So please let me know. I have to educate them a lot about their foolish opinions. Recently explaining once again how Van Dijk is levelled above any centre-back in the league, and stated Arsenal would have one, if not two titles if Virgil was in the team the last 2 years. It got me thinking, what Liverpool players would have given Arsenal a title or two if you swapped them? For example, would Trent instead of Ben White have given them a title, Mo instead of Saka, Ali instead of Raya? Ali instead of Raya. Raya was really good last year, so no. But Ali instead of Ramsdale the year before, yes. Arsenal would have won the title if Ali had been instead of Ramsdale in that team. No doubt in my mind. If Virgil was in that team over either Saliba or Gabriel, they would have two titles. Trent over Ben White. Yeah, I think that makes a big difference. Now look, credit to Ben White. He had two good back-to-back seasons, and he is better defensively than Trent, though the gap is not as big as people will pretend it is. And White is decent going forward. Like, he makes the right runs, he's got good timing, and he picks good options when he gets into the final third. No slide on him here. But Trent is the greatest playmaking right back of all time. And Arsenal often struggled to break teams down because they didn't have anyone in their team that could play a defense-splitting longer pass. Odegaard's a passing genius in the final third. Not from deep into the final third, but when he's in the final third. Saka's a very inventive player, but if you think Trent to Martinelli, what an option and a weapon that could have been, I do think that would be something that would have enabled them to create more goal-scoring opportunities, and it would have enabled them to break down defences a little bit more. He's also the best crosser of the ball in the league. KDB put to one side. Trent is the best crosser, and again, I think that could have benefited Arsenal. So I would say Trent gives them one more title. Not two, maybe. Not two, but one more title I think Trent would have given them. Ali gives them one, Virgil gives them two. I wouldn't say Mo instead of Saka, but I would say Mo instead of the options they've had as their 9. But they just haven't had a good 9. Havertz has done fine. He's not a good 9. He's a good player. He's not a good 9. He's a 10 playing as a 9. Jesus is a good player. He's like a 9.5. And I know Mo's not a 9 either, but he's a much better goal scorer than those two. So I think Mo. I think if they'd had prime Mane last year, instead of Martinelli, who was really poor last year, I think that would have made a huge difference as well. And if we can continue with the prime Liverpool team, certainly prime Fabinho as their 6 the last 2 years would have made an enormous difference. Because you could have just played Rice as the left-sided 8 the whole year. And I think that would have helped hugely. So from the current team, the big 4, Mo gets them at least one. Trent gets them one. Ali gets them one. And again, Ali's much better than Raya, but Raya was really good last year. I'm not sure there's much of an improvement you could make on how he performed. Virgil gives them two. Fab gives them at least one. Mane gives them one last year. They're not at Liverpool anymore, obviously, but if you want to include them, I think you can. I think that's it. You could maybe argue Prime Bobby in the season just gone. Prime Bobby instead of either Havertz or Jesus. A better version of both. You could argue that would have been enough, but we'll just say the big four and then Fab and Mane if we want to dig back a little bit into our title-winning team. I think these two questions are together. Matt JT, you often speak about balance and partnerships. What attributes do you look for in a balanced centre-back pairing, midfield 2 or 3 and forwards? What current partnerships would you consider the most balanced in defence, midfield and attack? So, centre-back, what I'm always looking for is I'm looking for an active defender, as a proactive defender and a reactive defender. So I'm looking for a stopper and a sweeper, basically. I'm looking for one that will do a lot of the dirty work. Like, I don't think you could play, let's say, Saliba and Ben White as a pair. Even though both are, talented footballers, I don't think either of them are going to be the ones to go and really dominate. Now, Liverpool have an unusual centre-back pairing in that Konate is the proactive one. He's the one that goes and does a lot of the dirty work. He's the one that goes and dominates. But Van Dijk can do all of that stuff. But he's better as the reactive cover defender. Spurs have a good pairing as well in Romero and Van de Ven in that regard. Romero is the proactive one. Van de Ven is the reactive one. If you look at, say, the Barcelona pairing with Puyol and Piqué, Puyol is the proactive. Piqué is the reactive. Ramos and Varane. Ramos was the proactive. Varane was the reactive. Now, when Ramos played with Pepe, Ramos would work as the reactive one. It's also why he got sent off quite a lot, because he wasn't particularly good at that role. If you look at, say, Baresi and Costa Curta, who had one of the best centre-back pairings ever, maybe the best centre-back pairing ever, Costa Curta was that more proactive one. He was the one that would step out. He was the one that would take on the man-marking jobs in the same way that Gabriel does at United, at City, at Arsenal rather, the same way that Konate does at Liverpool. So that's kind of what I look for. One who'll do the dirty work, one who can be a man marker, one who can be that front-footed defender, and then one who's the calmer sweeper type, reads the game a bit better, makes the last-ditch intervention to cover for his teammate, but also controls things and keeps things calm. I think the best balanced pairing in the world is Konate and Van Dijk. I think, Van Dijk, to me, is so far above every other centre-back in the world right now. It's not even funny. There's never been a centre-back. And I can go back with this probably 50 years of looking at centre-back pairings. Now, I'm not 50, obviously. I've done this over the last 25 years or so. But of looking historically at centre-back pairings and midfield pairings, I love a defensive midfielder. But looking at pairings and looking at centre-backs in particular and trying to rank them, year by year, I would always say, if you go through year by year in the Premier League, I always kind of look at, who was the best, who had the title belt as the best in this position here. This year, etc. And then who was behind them? Who's the one that was kind of the preordained next in line? Who's the one that was pushing that player week after week to raise his level higher and higher, I've never seen at centre-back, and I include Baresi in this, who I still would have as my number one centre-back of all time. But I think if you look at Baresi's career, there were, most years, there was at least one who was somewhere in his stratosphere. Like, peak Baresi always had a couple of guys that were like just a notch below. I don't think there's anybody within 5 notches of Virgil. And this isn't even peak Virgil. This is post-ACL Virgil. Peak Virgil was a different animal altogether. But even now, that not only speaks to his level, but it also speaks to the general lack of great centre-backs that we have. You go back and look at the 90s and the 2000s, and you can look at lists of great centre-backs. We don't have that now. Like, the guys that I would say are top 10 centre-backs in the world now, most of them are not great. They're very good, but they're not great. Whereas back in the 90s, the 2000s, the 80s, the 70s, etc., you were having to leave great centre-backs off your top 10 lists. I feel like that's one of the big changes there. But I think with Van Dijk, he's so far above everybody else. Because like I said, he's that rare player who can be your man-to-man marker, can be that front-footed, destroying centre-back, can be the aerially dominant centre-back, or he can be that back-footed sweeper type. There's so few defenders can do both roles. Then you factor in his passing ability, which is outrageous for centre-back. Then you factor in his ball carrying, which is very good for centre-back. Then you factor in the threat he poses on set pieces at the other end, and the gravity of Van Dijk. The fact that when he makes a run, there's always 2 defenders gone with him. When Liverpool get a set piece, teams are hyper-focused on Van Dijk. And that creates a lot of opportunities for players like Konate, Cody Gakpo, Darwin Núñez, Diogo Jota, players who are also very good in the air. And I think Konate is the second best defender in the Premier League. I think as a pure defender, he's quite close to Virgil. As a footballer, that's where the gap is. Like, if you look at Saliba, right? As a footballer, you can see an argument to him being the next in line behind Van Dijk. And there's not an enormous gap between them as footballers, but as defenders, there's a huge gap. In the same way that as a defender, Konate's significantly better than Saliba. Saliba's a better footballer, but as an all-round package, I'm taking Ibu all day. I think they're the best balanced centre-back pairing. I also think it's important to have partnerships between centre-back and full-back on both sides. Just understanding. And then full-back to winger, etc., etc. In midfield, for me, it's always, I want one who can run the game, and I want one who can run. And I don't just mean run aimlessly round. I'm not talking about a Jordan Henderson type. I'm talking about someone that can get forward and get in the box or track a runner. So I always look at the best midfield pairing I've seen for Liverpool in my time. So not going back to the archives, but just in my time, is Alonso and Mascherano. Mascherano could run and he could win the ball at an incredibly high level. And Alonso could run the game. He could also shield the defence at a really high level, and that's perfect. So off ball, I want one who can shield and one who can win the ball. On ball, I want one who can dictate and one who can go. If you're looking at a 3, it's a little bit different because it just depends on what way you're wanting your team to function. Like, if you look at Barcelona, the great Barcelona midfield, Xavi, Busquets, Iniesta, there's no physicality. There's no athlete among the three. But there's genius levels in possession and out of possession. They wouldn't overwhelm you physically to take the ball off you. They would trap you and force you to give the ball back to them. I've said this before. If you watch Busquets in his prime and you watch teams attack Barcelona, if they were foolish enough to attack Barcelona through the middle, Busquets will take an angle on them and just lead them away from the centre. He will lead them into an alley towards a fullback. And the fullback will then step to meet them. And now they've got the fullback coming towards them and Busquets on them at an angle. So now they're looking to turn back because they're going into a dead end. It's a cul-de-sac now. So now they're looking to turn back. Excuse me. And if it's on the right, they turn around. They've got Busquets coming from one side, Alves stepping up to from the right back position. Xavi's come across now to cut off any ball back towards the centre backs, and Messi, who wouldn't press to them, but would block a passing lane to the left back. And now all of a sudden they've got nowhere to play. They can't go down the line because Alves is there. They can't go centrally because Busquets is there. They can't go to the centre backs because Xavi's made that angle gone and Messi's taken away the left back. They can hoik it back to the goalkeeper, or they can try and speculatively go across the pitch. But they're looking at a long pass. You're looking at putting the ball in the air for a considerable amount of time, which leads to its own problems. And then on the other side, the exact same thing. Abidal or Jordi Alba in later years steps up to meet them. Much more painful on the left side, by the way. If Busquets led you left, you're losing the ball every single time. Because Eric Abidal was a monster of a defender. But he's stepping up, you can't go past him. Buzzy's coming in, you can't go central. You can't turn central, you can't pass central, because he's just going to take the ball off you. You turn around, Iniesta's coming back, doing the same thing as Xavi, blocking the centre-backs. And Pedri is now blocking the ball to the right back. And Pedri's a much better presser than Leo Messi. So if you clip the ball over his head to the right back, now the right back is in a whole world of trouble. Because now he's got Pedri chasing him. He's got David Villa, who's a really smart presser, coming from the 9 across. And you've got Iniesta now making that run back in that direction. And now all of a sudden the right back's in a whole lot of trouble. And maybe the only ball again is back to the goalkeeper. But because Villa's really smart, he hasn't committed fully to that press on the right back. He's just threatening him. If you turn in field, I'm coming to take the ball off you. So what does the fullback do? They panic, they give it to the goalkeeper, and now Villa's in on top of the goalkeeper. And now the goalkeeper's having to pump it long and Barcelona have the ball back. So even if you, as the player who'd made that run and found yourself going into that cul-de-sac, even if you managed to retain possession and get it to a teammate, your team is losing the ball. Barcelona's transition defence was never about trying to win the ball back. It was about trying to make you give it back to them. They didn't have the physicality. They didn't have the speed of foot to go and take the ball off you. What they had was the speed of thought to make you give it back to them. Absolutely. That midfield, just the balance was perfect. Other perfect midfield balances, Keane and Scholes. Keane could run, Scholes could run the game. Now, as Keane got older, he could run the game as well. Scholes, obviously, early in his career, was a lot more box-to-box, largely to the attacking box, less so to the defensive box. Gilberto Silva and Vieira, another brilliant one. Gilberto Silva could sit and shield the defence, and Vieira could go and win the ball. Scholes would shield the defence. Now, it often got him in trouble because Scholes couldn't tackle, but he was so clever with his positioning. But Keane could win the ball back anywhere. Likewise, Keane could sit in and hold. If it was Nicky Butt playing next to Keane, Nicky Butt could go and win the ball back. Nicky Butt's an underrated player. If it was Keane and Hargreaves had legs for days. Hargreaves and Carrick. Hargreaves could run, Carrick could run the game. Carrick would protect the defence, Hargreaves would go and win the ball back. Hargreaves and Carrick wouldn't have been Alonso and Mascherano, but could have been a similar type of pairing, if not for the injuries that Owen Hargreaves suffered. Both for England and for United. That would have been a really, really good pairing. In terms of who's the best now, do you know what's funny? I don't see a whole lot of great midfield pairings in the game now. I think there's teams that have great midfield talent, but they haven't got established pairings, or they have one great player and one okay player. Like City, for example, have a lot of great midfield talent. But I don't... Rodri and Kovacic, I think, is probably the best balanced pair they have. But Kovacic is still a little bit inconsistent, and he just always has been, unfortunately. He's a good player. He's a very good player. But he's a little bit inconsistent. I think Real potentially could have a perfect pairing with Tchouaméni and Camavinga. You add Valverde in as a third, I think that midfield could be spectacular. But that would be a very different type of midfield to that Barcelona three. That would be a three that's just going to overwhelm you. Now, they can play. They can ping the ball around with the best of them. Camavinga's, I think, just a ridiculous talent. They can play, but they can go and monster you as well. I think the Arsenal midfield has decent balance to it, because you've got one who sits, one who runs, and one who runs the game. Odegaard runs the game, Rice runs box to box, and Partey sits and holds the midfield. So they can have one deep, one in the middle, one attacking. And it's very hard to play through a midfield like that. Partey shields the defence really well. Rice wins the ball back very well. Odegaard is a clever presser. He's not particularly good defensively, but he's a clever presser of the ball. And he makes things difficult because he takes up good positions and he blocks passing lanes. So I think the Arsenal midfield is one of those really well balanced midfields. I think Liverpool potentially could get there with the right six. I don't think it's with Zubimendi as the six, though. Even though I really like the idea of Zubimendi in that team, I don't think Zubimendi, Alexis, and Szoboszlai has the type of balance I would be looking for. Now, on the ball, they could be spectacular. Would a Zubimendi Gravenberch, if he continued to develop, maybe Alexis at the 10, it still wouldn't be what I'm looking for. If Liverpool had Camavinga, McAllister, Szoboszlai, that's a midfield I could fully get on board with. Tchouaméni, McAllister, Szoboszlai is a midfield I could absolutely get on board with. Saliba potentially would be great in that. Do you know what midfield I think has the potential to be great? Is Doucouré Wharton, but only if Doucouré recovers fully from the ACL tear. In terms of the attack, I mean, there's just different ways you can go. I love the idea of a creative, inventive central player and two goal-scoring wide players. Pep did it with Barca. Obviously, he had Pedri and Villa either side of Messi. Klopp did it, obviously, at Liverpool. But there's also part of me that loves just having outlets. Like, I still think one of the scariest front threes is the Sterling, Aguero, Sané front three that City had. But a big part of that was KDB's ability to make it a front four, and it would shift from 4-3-3 to 4-4-2 or 4-2-4. Sané would pull out as an actual winger and Sterling would move in as a second striker. I like having flexibility in my front line as well. I like having players that can play in different sets. I think there's a Brighton front three that could be terrifying. In Minta, João Pedro, and Enciso off the left. I think that's got scary potential. But I also like the idea of Mitoma off the left and Enciso as the second striker. I think it also works with a Dingra off the left. It could work with Gruda off the left. They've got so many options. Again, in the Premier League, when we look at the balance, on paper, the Arsenal one could work quite well. You've got a creator and a scorer in Saka, a scorer in Martinelli, who's also an outlet, and then you've got that kind of 10 as a 9 in Havertz, who can also be a hold-up player. In practice, I think that can work, but Martinelli hasn't shown he can play all that well in their kind of half-pitch attack. Great on the counter, not so good against the set defenses. I'm not convinced by the Real attack yet. I think there's a lot of wingers and no central presence. I wonder if we might see Jude play as a 10/false 9 with Mbappe and Vinny Jr. I wonder if we might see that. Because then Rodrigo and Endrick can be the backup to those two, and Arda Güler can be the backup to Jude. More of a deeper role, but breaking into that central role with the two forwards splitting. I think that could be spectacular. I think the Bayern front four, I think that's potentially got everything in it, because that's a 4-2-3-1 obviously rather than a 3, but you've got your 9 who's a playmaking 9 as well as a lethal goal scorer. You've got a playmaking 10 who can also get you goals. You've got a playmaking winger who can also get you goals. And then you get your outlet, whether it's Sané, Gnabry, Kingsley Coleman. I don't think he's still there, isn't he, this year? I think there's a ton of potential in that lineup. If you're going front two, I do like a little and a large. I don't know why. I've always just liked the little and large combinations. So again, like I think Lukaku Lautaro was great for Inter a few years ago. I think Marcus Thuram and Lautaro works well. I always liked Heskey and Owen. Even though I wanted Fowler in the team, I loved the Heskey and Owen pairing because it got the best out of Owen. Not a lot of teams play with a 2 now, though. You know, not a lot of teams play with a 2. Right, I need to go to a break because I need to go lay down for a couple of minutes. I'll be back after this. Right, welcome back. So, last question, I think it's kind of 2 questions, comes from Phil Walker. So, can you name a best 11 of players who did not fulfill their potential due to injury, illness, or untimely death, like Duncan Edwards? Then an 11 of players who did not fulfill their potential because of their own behaviour, and then outline who you think would win a match between the 2 teams. Okay. Give me a piece of paper. This will do. And a pen. Does this pen work? No, it does not. 47 pens here. Every time I have a good one, it gets robbed. Right, okay. Goalkeeper for the team that was ruined by injuries, I'm going Chris Kirkland. You can fill in some of the obvious ones here. So I'm always going to have Seb Deisler in a team like this. We'll have Duncan Edwards, as you said. We'll have R9, as you mentioned. Robbie Fowler, I think, has to be in that team as well. So we're going to have him. You could put Michael Owen in too, frankly. I think I will. I think we'll go with a front three of Owen, Ornine, and Fowler. Midfield three, Edwards, Deisler. Right. Let's think. So, Thiago? I think Thiago. I'm going to say Thiago. So I'm going Deisler, Edwards, and Thiago in midfield. I think Thiago's an all-time talent, but injuries, etc. Owen Hargreaves is going to get in this team because I mentioned him earlier, and I've always liked Owen Hargreaves. I'm going to put him in a right back where he played for Bayern at times. Let me see. Jonathan Woodgate, Ledley King. Ledley King has to be in this team. Jonathan Woodgate is definitely an option. Eric Bailly. Oh, I didn't pick Daniel Sturridge. Unfortunately, I don't think he gets in over the three I did pick. Let me think. We're looking for a centre-back and a left-back. Thomas Vermaelen. Thomas Vermaelen was a hell of a player, but his knees were awful. We could include Paul McGrath, by the way, who I genuinely believe if he hadn't had such horrendous knee problems, he would have been seen as the best centre-back in the world, and that was during the peak of Baresi. I genuinely believe that. I think he was just ridiculous. So we need one more in defence. Ideally a centre-back. Oh no, ideally a left-back, but I can go centre-back because Vermaelen could play left-back. Marco Reus, honourable mention. Mario Götze, honourable mention. Phil Jones, I think, is worth a mention. And you could argue Van Basten because he had to retire, but he did win 3 Ballon d'Ors, so, you know, how much more was there? Santi Cazorla is definitely one. Could you go Santi Cazorla as your left back and just have him as a playmaker? No, probably not. Let's be another centre back. Thiago Lloris, shout out. His career was ruined by injuries. I'm inclined to go Woodgate here. I'm just going to go Woodgate and shift from Ireland to left back. Right. Unfortunately, the next team is going to be heavily Brazilian because a lot of Brazilian players, for me, didn't fulfill their potential because of their off-field stuff. We're going to have Eden Hazard and Neymar in this team, neither of whom lived up to their potential, and it was largely because of their off-field habits, in my opinion. We're going to put Adriano as the 9. Gaza's going to be in midfield. Neymar can be a 10. We'll put George Best on the left wing. We'll go Hazard, Gaza, Best, Adriano as the 9. So we need a central midfielder. Central midfielder on a full defence. Do you know who's... I feel like this might be a little bit harsh, but I'm putting Ravel Morrison in as the second midfielder. Now, I know a lot of it is to do with family stuff, but Ravel Morrison, what a player. But just couldn't stay on the pitch, couldn't keep himself in a straight line. Defenders don't tend to be all that wild, though, do they? Let's see. It's so many. I'm just looking at a list here, and it's pretty much all attacking players. Andy Van der Meijden. Yeah. Right. I'm going to go Kieran Dyer at right back. Now, I know he didn't play predominantly as a right back, but he made his England debut at right back, so I'm going to go with him there. Well known for his off-field misbehaviours. I'm going to go Royston Drenthe at left back. Again, a winger, but we're scraping the barrel here. A proper troublemaker off the field. Centre back and goalkeeper. Mark Bosnich is the goalkeeper. Centre back. Ruben Semedo. Terrible set of lads. But talented, big, strong, quick, good on the ball, but screwed his own career up. And who else? What other centre back? Oh, Breno. It has to be Breno. The uber talented Brazilian centre back who went to Bayern and then got done for arson. I think he got like 3 years in prison when he was like 23 or something like that. Yeah, Breno. So Bosnich, Dyer, Semedo, Breno, Drenthe, Gaza, Ravel, Morrison. Does it feel harsh to include Hazard? It kind of does. I'll put Robinho in instead. Another terrible set of lads. Robinho, Neymar, and George Best with Adriano up front. And the other team is Kirkland, Hargreaves, King, Woodgate, Vermaelen, Deisler, Edwards, Thiago, Owen, Ornine, and Fowler. And I think that team, even though the best player between both is George Best, but we don't know what Duncan Edwards could have been. But George Best is the best player off that list. I think the injury team wins. All right. So there we go. Right, folks, that's going to do me. I'll be back later with 2-footed extra.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.